Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stewart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. We've got Larry on his cell phone down there. He's not had a landline now for some time, and hopefully we can connect real well. Hi, Larry. How you doing?
Hey, Stewart. I'm hunkered down on my front porch in a thunderstorm, but I'm okay, so let's get at it.
Okay. I'm not sure where we should start. There's a fair amount going on, but there's one thing that is of interest that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. There are those people who are claiming that April 22nd is actually, might be anyway, the true Passover. And I've heard this before, and they're arguing over, I guess, what a full moon is, what a new moon is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they've got their scriptures that they use to sort of prove it, but I guess this is an argument that anybody can take either way. However, if April 20, what I'm going to get at here is something that I wanted to bring up. I set this up for a half an hour. Originally, it was going to be 15 minutes because tomorrow, don't forget, we have Barry Rothman on, and we're going to be discussing his Torah codes. And we have some other Torah codes that are kind of interesting, too. Larry may get to one or two of those yet tonight. But anyway, April 22nd is kind of interesting because if it is the true Passover, then that would mean that the resurrection would take place on the April 25th, April 26th zone. Now, the only reason that I'm bringing this up is that there's a Messiah prophecy from a rabbi. It's been absolutely accurate to date. And it actually involves two rabbis. And I just want to read. On the eve of the year 5780, which was last September 29th, which was on 2019, which was Rosh Hashanah. 5780, the year of corrections. Now, when you correct someone or you correct a nation, you are, in fact, giving that nation a readout. You are spanking them, correcting them, admonishing them. And it says this rabbi claims that the year 5780 is the year that Israel will undergo the start of her corrections. And it says here, there will not be a government in Israel for an extended period, and the various camps will quarrel much without a decision on either side. And then on Rosh Hashanah, they will fight in heaven, the holy side against the side of evil, and God, his entourage, will decide between them. And this is all I can say, and from here I swore not to reveal more secrets. Now, this is Rabbi Kaduri, wrote that back in 1979. Now, you may remember that Benjamin Netanyahu could not form a government, so then it went to can't think of his name right now. What's his name? Benjamin? Larry?
You talking about Gantz?
Gantz, yes. Benjamin Gantz. Okay? Now listen carefully to this. There will come on the day that two ministers win the government in the land of Israel. That happened on April 21st. When Gantz and Netanyahu formed their coalition government on April 21st. It's a big prophetic event. Both their names will be Benjamin. Now, this is written long ago. and neither of them will succeed in establishing their government or kingship. In other words, Benjamin Netanyahu tried, he couldn't do it. Gantz tried, he couldn't do it. And so the two ministers finally sign an agreement that have been fighting all this time. They set up finally a coalition government in the land of Israel. Listen carefully. On that day, April 21st, which is when it happened, know and understand that King Messiah already stands at the doorway or at the door, and on the Sabbath afterward, he will come and be revealed. And understand this and remember it. It's kind of interesting because April 21st was on a Monday. The Sabbath next is on the 25th, 26th, depending on where you are, because they're ahead of us here. Now, what's very, very interesting is that if you go further into the prophecies, what does it mean that Messiah is standing at the door, standing on the doorway, really, basically? On the Sabbath afterwards, this is what it says now, he will come and be revealed, which would be, if it's the true Sabbath, which would be 26th. Now, is he saying that the revelation of Jesus Christ is at the door and he will be revealed on the Sabbath? Well, I guess that's up in the air. Now, what's interesting here is these two rabbis have never been wrong, and they wrote it a long time ago. Everything is coming to pass exactly as they said it would. Now, this one Rabbi, Kaduri, is the one who met Jesus Christ face to face, if I remember right. Right, Larry?
Yeah, I believe that's right. And he wrote that name down, but they wouldn't let him open that note until he was dead.
Yeah, I'm sure he feared major persecution and ridicule because, of course, their stand on Jesus Christ is they don't want really much to do with him, just to put it mildly. And so this is kind of an interesting situation that's developing. Does it have any relationship to the rapture of the church? I think it probably could have, but it has more to do. And I wrote a blog, and I would urge everybody to go read it on the Lightgate Blogger or lightgateblogger.com and read this blog. I went into it extensively, and all the verses of Scripture that relate to a lot of this, and how close we could really be to Daniel's 70th week, because this is what I think it's referring to. 5780 is 2020. That's this year, 2020, year 2020. He says here, it is the year of corrections. Well, that can only refer to Daniel's 70th week. That's what the 70th week is for. It's to correct Israel. We call it the tribulation period. So sometime during this year, that's going to happen. Now, he tells us when that's going to be. When Israel, two ministers, win the government in the land of Israel. Happened on April 21st. What I'm getting at is we have to be awfully close to Daniel's 70th week. And if the argument for the Passover being on the 22nd, you had 3 days, you come right to Saturday, same date, 25th, 26th. So things are going on behind the scenes. We have no idea. Don't forget about the Sanhedrin, what they've been doing. all this, the peace agreement and everything else that's going on. What do you think, Larry? What do you make of that?
Well, I think that's really rather telling and something we probably need to keep an eye on, because these rabbi predictions seem to be rather accurate. And I did send you another one today that Breaking Israel News reported, where another rabbi who actually had predicted World War I, but he also predicted a great war later on, about 75 years past World War II. There would be a great war start in 2020, the year 2020, and that's rather telling.
Yeah, that's most likely the Gog-Magog war, which means we got to be awfully close to the beginning of something. Now, a lot of people think that the tribulation or Daniel's 70th week cannot start unless a peace treaty is signed. But a careful reading of Daniel does not say that. What it says is that the Antichrist, the fake Messiah, will confirm a covenant that lasts for 7 years. We've only had one covenant that was for 7 years. It's still kind of in the background. It's called the Oslo Accords. It was a 2-year, 5-year agreement. The Oslo Accords could be then confirmed at any time during the very beginning of Daniel's 70th week, because the Oslo Accords were a peace accord. That's what it was all about. So this could be very, very interesting. And remember that the Lord Jesus Christ said, I'm going to return at a time, excuse me, you think not. So that gives you some food for thought, because does that mean that he is going to return not on a feast day where people are targeting, like Pentecost, trumpets? All of them have some argument as to this could be the feast day that Jesus will come on. Well, he said he's going to come at a time you think not. He was addressing Israel. So that would almost preclude that he would be coming on a feast day. He'd be coming on a time when everybody doesn't realize it. It would catch everybody by total surprise. So as we draw closer into this thing, we only got a few days left, actually, before this. Now, the other possibility is that when he said the next Sabbath, that he was actually speaking of a sabbatical year. Well, the next sabbatical year is in 2022. It is possible he's speaking about the next sabbatical year, which would be then in 2022, and we'll have a 2-year wait from, but as far as the Daniel 70th week, if this is actually the year of corrections, Daniel's 70th week must begin sometime right away, which, of course, brings up all kinds of things. Where do you want to go, Larry, with what's going on around here?
Well, I guess I could bring up Tom Mack's new code on ancient evil.
Yes.
Actually, April 22nd or 21st, 2020, the same day you're talking about the government of Israel change, basically. Tom Mack found a new Torah code, and of course he says it'll be controversial because he expanded it a little bit, and a lot of the mockers will really attack him. But I found the wording really interesting. He titled a Torah code that he found, Ancient Evil Creates Vaccine. And in the first matrix that he ran, he came up with number 1, vaccine, number 2, ancient evil, number 3, created or creator, number 4, covenant, alliance, league, number 5, beast. Now, what's so interesting is some of that wording is what you actually were talking about. And
yes.
then he expanded his matrix a little bit, and he found involved also the number 6, the word Cain, number 7, contamination, number 8, the year 5782, which he says is 2021 to 2022, which you've already brought up, and then number 9, vampire. And then he expanded it a little bit more, and he found the word mark, sign, or token. So that is really, to me, that's really, really telling. What do you think?
Yeah, it's all coming together so rapidly. And they're not giving up. If you listen to these guys on this task force every night, which I don't, but occasionally pick up a little bit of what they're saying. Excuse me. They're telling everybody in code that this thing is going to be a while. And now they're afraid of a second wave, which we talked about on the last show, that there are prophecies of a second wave beginning sometime in the summer through fall, November, which will be far worse than the first wave. Well, when they're talking like that, they're basically talking in code. And what they're telling you is they're holding the carrot out of a relaxation, which they may well do. And then a second wave comes in and a lockdown like you never saw before, I don't know how it can get much worse for most people, occurs. And all the while that this is happening, Larry, we've got all kinds of food disruptions, meat packing places shutting down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember when Red Oak came and I did that video with him, he said that famine was coming to America. I think it's already started. Fox News had a brief thing about huge lines of people and cars lining up at these food shelters, these food banks, just to get something to eat. I think starvation is already beginning. What do you think, Larry? They're rationing anyway.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And by the way, a lot of the shipments are being disrupted as we speak. And I noticed also recently China brought Smithfield Foods and shut it and a lot of the beef industry manufacturing down. And at the same time, I saw reports today that Tyson Chicken was shutting plants down for chickens and also hogs. So what we're seeing basically, Stewart, is the I guess you could say a manufactured famine. It's coming, and of course it's being orchestrated and directed at the highest levels.
Yeah. This is Psalm 2 in action, which also proves we're very, very close to the tribulation period, because Psalm 2 is really about Daniel's 70th week and the rise of evil. Like Larry just said, basically ancient evil is rising up, and they're grabbing control via this contagion and panic and fear of people. I don't want to get into the hoax of it all, but there is a piggyback going on. They release this thing, and I don't believe they have any, any intention of ever giving the rights of the people back. And now I'm seeing more and more protests. Have you heard any more about that?
Well, just a lot of contention across the country because, up until coronavirus, if you'll remember, Stewart, for probably 3.5 solid years, protesters were good people. Oh, they were so good and they had so many rights. And now, Stewart, suddenly protesters are the bad people and they have no rights at all to do that. What a stupid leadership this country has.
Well, it just goes to prove that these people are all in it together, and they're all working in concert. And what this is really, it's a communist takeover and via this coronavirus 19 and fear and panic, which is deliberate, and they've got the people cowered down, and you got people that are condemning anybody that goes outside. So this has really worked. This is all propaganda, and it works very well. But what they're not telling you is that the food supply lines are breaking down. And here's what I think this is the way it works. And we haven't even touched the oil and the crash of the oil industry. And it hasn't changed as far as I know. So Trump has said something about, well, I'll bail out the oil companies. Well, the first stimulus, if you want to call it that first package that was supposed to go to small businesses, all went to the big businesses. And the second one, probably it'll happen the same way again. As far as I know, nobody's gotten any checks from anybody. I certainly haven't. I haven't seen a $12.50 stimulus check or whatever it is. I don't think anybody else has either. It's just a carrot. Yeah. Go ahead, Larry.
Hey, Stewart. I was just going to mention Hal Turner said he and his wife both got a $1,200 stimulus check into their account, and before they could get to the bank to claim it, it vanished. It had been removed from their accounts.
Yep. So here's what we got, folks. We've got a glut. We've got an oil glut. There's more oil than they even know where to put it. And we've got a glut in the food industry because they're having to kill off everything they've got. They're killing pigs, chickens, beef, because they got no place to put it. Meanwhile, people are starving. Well, once they shut down these things, it's not that easy to set them back up. So what happens is you have a glut, then you have a huge contraction, and then you have trouble, because then you have a major shortage. And actually people are running into shortages already. I went to a local grocery store, and I picked up some peaches. I picked up actually 5 little cans of peaches, not the big cans, little cans. And when I got to the checkout, they said, you can't have five. They took one of them away. So we're going to see all these kind of things happen as we venture further and further into this thing. This is going to be a total lockdown. This is really going to be a mess. And I believe what we're watching is we're entering into Daniel's 70th week. We're going to see major war. Like Larry said, this rabbi, 75 years after World War II, that's 2020, we're going to see the Great War. Well, the Great War is probably Isaiah 17, Daniel 8, and Ezekiel 38:39, Gog and Magog. A lot of people think this is way off in the future, and we hope it is, but this thing can happen virtually overnight, and it can happen so rapidly you go to bed one night, and the next day you wake up, and everything is at war. And I remember your friend there, Larry, said suddenly war just broke out everywhere, and we're seeing the maneuvering and military movements that would indicate this is true. Have you heard any more about that?
Well, I actually have heard that there's a couple of things going on that if you watch mainstream media in America, you don't have a clue. But one of them is that reports that something's happened to Kim Jong-un, and possibly he's on life support. Nobody really knows, but his sister may be in a rise to power. Now, if that begins to happen, it's very telling that the North Korean military, who are really strong as far as politics, they may actually take over, and that would be a bad move because they want war. Now, what's also interesting is the fact that possibly, why would Iran suddenly today launch a new satellite into orbit, which I checked it out, and it reports that it's in orbit at 264 miles up. And Israel verified that they had seen a launch, and the U.S. verified it and really is going to go to the UN about it. But there are some claims in the background by some insiders claiming that because Kim Jong-un may be out of pocket now or have a problem, that they couldn't depend on the two satellites of North Korea maybe to do the job, so Iran was trying to launch a single satellite to use over the U.S. So all of this is going on, and now at the same time, Stewart, I'll just comment real quick, is the fact that Trump has given the go-ahead publicly and really in Iran's face for our U.S. Navy to literally destroy any ships from Iran that harass our forces.
Yeah, and they've been harassing our Navy for quite some time, I guess, with these little boats. And I guess these little boats can carry missiles as well. So that could easily trigger Daniel 8 once we get going into that. I mean, this whole thing, folks, can explode overnight. And it's just so odd that we have these prophecies from these rabbis that have come true to the letter virtually, just like true biblical prophecy. And here we are on that day, April 21st, when the government is born. Know and understand that King Messiah stands at the doorway, and on the Sabbath afterwards, he will come and be revealed. Now, we don't know whether that's a revelation of Lucifer, or it could be a twofold. Could be the arrival. We really don't know how all this is going to work out, but it is getting fascinating with everything that appears to be going on behind the scenes and not anything about what you're being told. Any last word, Larry?
Yeah, and we can talk about it later on another show, but Brent Miller and Kevin Sorbo just put an incredible DVD out that I'm reviewing, and it's called Before the Wrath, and it literally deals with the Lord and his coming for his bride. It's done. It's so well done. I just stood at awe at how well they articulated what may be coming.
Yeah, I watched the trailer where they say, a lot of people mock the return and say there is no such thing. Well, this evidently proves that there not only is a return, there's a reason for the return. And as I think myself, I don't ask anyone to believe it, but the church really does not have anything to do with Daniel's 70th week. Daniel's 70th week is the return of the Lord to Israel, not on the ground, but to deal with Israel. And that's what Daniel's 70th week is all about. Thy people, thy holy city. The promises made to the church are not of this earth. They have nothing to do with Israel or the earth. Jesus said in his return covenant, I go to prepare a place, and I will come back and take you there to bring you back to the Father's house. That's spiritual and literal. That's where the rapture comes from. Anyway, it'll be very, very interesting to see how all of this works out. Don't forget, tomorrow night we have Barry Rothman on. Going to have a very interesting discussion on what he has found on the Torah codes. And it'll be fascinating to see what he thinks, actually, of these rabbi prophecies. Because he would be very, very interested in the Old Testament prophecies, and that's what this is all about. So it's just fascinating now that we have three rabbis all warning war is coming this summer or sometime. Anyway, thanks a lot for listening, and we'll see you again tomorrow night, Thursday, with Barry Rothman and Larry. Anyway, good night.